everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. I'm just going to allow a couple of seconds for everybody to come on board. As I can see, the room is filling up very quickly. We're all very prompt, which is great, and I'm absolutely delighted that you're joining us on this sunny afternoon. It's I think it's 25 or 26 degrees in Kilkenny, so it's really wonderful to have sunshine, even though we're not seeing it. But anyway, with that, this afternoon, I would like to introduce you to Toyin Laketu. And I'm absolutely delighted to have made her acquaintance a couple of months ago through a contact of mine, because I said I wanted somebody who was pertinent and on point vis-a-vis Brexit, with absolute first-hand experience of this. So here we are today. And the background is a degree in psychology, a master's in international business. So she's really coming armed and well qualified. She's worked for Cockpits Studios. She's worked for the Crafts Council in Britain. And she is just taking up a new position, which is really interesting, in London College of Fashion. So I'm absolutely honored to be here today. I'm delighted that so many of you are joining us. And once the initial session is over, we have a special session for the jewelers and goldsmiths that I promised you I'd research, promised you a number of months ago. So here we are, it's here today. And with that, Toyin, welcome.
Thank you, Emma. Lovely to be with you guys. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. So here we are doing a Brexit webinar, still 6 months on, still a bit of a groan, lots of pains. So today I'm just going to kind of walk you through some of the step-by-steps, and also kind of thinking about some of the new things that have come in. So, you know, regardless of whether you're in the UK or whether you're in Ireland, you have this whole new thing called the import one-stop shop, which people are frantically trying to get their heads around. How does that work in terms of my exporting generally to the European Union, which also impacts you as well. So I'll talk a bit more about that. So kicking off, so as Emma says, here's me. So I'm a fashion, business and digital consultant. And I've got over 14 years working with startups and multinational businesses, working in international trade. So I used to work for the Department of International Trade alongside the British Fashion Council, working on fashion, luxury and retail, and working with many big high street brands, helping them to export and expand internationally. So I have experience working in international trade, business development and marketing. And as I say, I specialize in fashion, retail and creative industries. Bit of a, you know, multitasker me. And I've worked, as I said, worked for many businesses. As Emma says, I'm taking up a new position at London College of Fashion, but currently I'm at the University for the Creative Arts, working in the business faculty there, working as a lecturer in business management and creative industries. So just a bit of background about Onwards and Up. So as I said, I've worked for 14 years in international trade. Around about 4 years ago, I decided to quit my job and basically set up my own kind of consultancy business. So we've been kind of around nearly for 4 years. So the Onwards and Up provides business support, export and digital support to small and medium-sized businesses, you know, looking at lots of different areas of your business and how to kind of structure it, but also connecting you with wider contacts and industry, but also kind of offering consultancy and business mentoring services to build and implement effective strategies, because we all need a good strategy to kind of grow our business. And as part of what I do, I work with a whole range of like different service providers. So we all tend to kind of feed in as and wherever, creating, you know, affordable support for creative businesses. But you know, my main thing in terms of setting up Onwards Up was about trying to help companies to get stuff done. So it's not always just about the talking, but it's also about the doing. And I tend to kind of get in there and help these guys to make it happen. So coming up today, what we're going to talk about. So what's it all about? We're going to kind of go through Brexit in a bit more detail and how it kind of affects you. Thinking about the business processes, looking at the paperwork to support exports, understanding Inco terms, VAT, which I think is one of the biggest bugbears of most people, understanding what that means, you know, whether that's from exporting to Europe or whether that's exporting to the UK, because it's all just changed. the import one-stop shop, and then further resources that you can kind of go and have a look at. So as we kind of say, we left the UK. I'm really sorry, I wasn't one of those. We left the European Union in December, and on the 1st of January, a new trade agreement called the EU-UK Trade Cooperation Agreement came into place, okay? So technically, as part of that, you know, they kind of said that it would mean that anything that was exported or imported into the UK, vice versa, would have zero tariffs on any goods, you know, kind of going on them, so to speak. However, there's obviously the smaller print, which nobody likes to talk about, which we're going to talk about today and clarify for you. And obviously, you know, as part of this, it's subject to the rules of origin, which we'll talk a bit more about. But also customs declarations are required for all shipments between the UK and European countries, and also for you to provide commercial or pro forma invoice as part of the whole process. So what do you need? So thinking about, you know, where to start, whether you're exporting to the UK, whether you're exporting to Northern Ireland. And actually Northern Ireland is slightly different because of the customs union. So, you know, you guys need to make sure that you have an EORI number, which is an Economic Operators Registration Identification Number. And you'll need that to be able to export and move goods between the UK and between Great Britain. So for you guys, you'll have a EORI number that is REX, you know, for and it will be I think it's around about 16-digit number. I can't remember how many digits there are. You'll have a number of digits, and at the end of it, it will say REX, and that identifies that the exports are coming from a European country. For Great Britain, because we have to split ourselves up into two, because there's a nice big wall down the Irish Sea, which means that Northern Ireland stays within the customs union and allows goods to be shipped freely without any paperwork and so forth. But goods coming from Great Britain, so that's Scotland, England, and Wales, we have different terms in terms of how we can export to Ireland. So again, if you're exporting to Great Britain, so Scotland, Wales, and England, then you need to make sure whoever you're exporting to, if it's a B2B business, that they have a EORI number with GB. And depending on where you are, if you're in a different part of the European Union, and you're shipping to Northern Ireland, oh no, not Northern Ireland, actually, if you're shipping from the UK to Northern Ireland, then you'll need a different EORI number, which is XI, okay? So thinking about how this all kind of moves, so when we kind of look at this diagram here, so if you know, the UK is shipping to Europe, then it's, you know, movement of goods subject to tariffs. If, you know, if we're kind of selling to you guys or you're selling to us, then again, it's free movement of goods subject to tariffs, okay? But however, if you're moving stuff between Northern Ireland, then it comes under the customs union agreement. So they are still, in some ways, it kind of just focuses on the goods, being able to kind of move freely across the border with reduced paperwork. If you're kind of working, or if you have a business in the UK that's shipping to Northern Ireland, then you can still ship goods into all Northern Ireland. There are no tariffs and duties on it because it is part of the UK, but you'll need to use a service called the Trader Support Service to be able to do that, to ensure that you don't incur any additional charges. So for your guys' point of view, kind of looking to export to the UK, some of the things to think about, setting up a duty deferment account if you've not done one of those yet. So apply for one. So a duty deferment account allows you to defer the payment of duties and VAT up to a month. Okay, so they're paid usually on the following month on the 15th. But also, depending on how big you are as a business, if you're not registered for VAT, you cannot claim back VAT. Okay, so some of the issues around, you know, maybe exporting to the UK now, and with the, I'll talk about it a bit further on down the line, the issue around import VAT, which all countries now need to pay. If you're not registered for VAT, then you will not be able to claim that back. Okay, so duty deferment account allows, you know, helps you to kind of manage your cash flow. Okay, so you're not having to pay for everything up front when it's kind of coming to the UK and so forth. So, you know, if you're not registered for VAT in Ireland, I recommend you get registered, you know, as part of the process if you do lots of exporting or kind of importing of goods from the UK. So coming on to the rules of origin. So this is the biggest sticking point around the Brexit deal. I think for many creatives and many fashion and jewelry kind of companies, because we was all told that everything was going to be like, yes, it's fine, everything's going to be zero tariffs, you know, you can ship as much as you like in and out. However, you know, we have to make sure that we're looking at the rules of origin as part of this. So rules of origin, goods must be supported by correct documentation. And actually, when we kind of say what the rules of origins are, it basically determines where the goods, the economic nationality of the goods and where they are made, okay? So that's what it's kind of determining. So it ensures that only goods produced in the UK or in the EU can benefit from zero tariffs. So when we talk about, you know, when we talk about the rules of origins, which is a really big thing here, it means that basically so for example, if you're a clothing company and you happen to be making your products, for example, here in the UK, and so all your clothes are made here in the UK, they're shipped to Ireland, and then in Ireland, you're basically putting in the labels and then putting them into the packaging, and then you are then reselling your goods on to other parts of Europe or back to the UK. That would not qualify for zero tariffs, because to be eligible for zero tariffs, you need to have that dress, either that dress or the material needs to be imported from the UK and then made into a dress, you know, so to speak. And then, you know, so there needs to be some level of processing that's happened in the market for it to then qualify to be made in Ireland, for it to kind of be able to be shipped back to the UK and have no tariffs. And I think right at the beginning of this year, there was a really good example with Marks and Spencer's Percy Pigs and the massive outcry around Marks and Spencer's Percy Pigs. So what happened there was Marks and Spencer's, obviously a British company, they manufacture their Percy Pig sweets in Germany, and they get them shipped to the UK. And all they do when they get to the UK is pick, pack, redistribute the products out to the relevant markets around Europe. Because no processing had taken place here in the UK, Marks and Spencer's were kind of left with a massive bill. If Marks and Spencer's had imported Percy Pigs and then taken Percy Pigs and slapped them onto a cupcake, then we would have changed the nature of the Percy Pigs, because it would have gone from being a confectionery sweet into being a cake. Okay, so some level of processing had taken place. And so they would then have been able to have shipped the cupcake back to Europe in that new form. Okay, so that's what it's all about. So, you know, once upon a time here in the UK, maybe even in Ireland, you know, because you can still do that because you're within the European Union. You can still have the situation where you're manufacturing goods in Portugal, having them, you know, exported to Ireland, putting the labels in and then re-exporting them back to the European Union. That's fine, because you are part of that whole kind of, you're part of that single market and you're part of that trade agreement. However, under the new rules, you know, that's not necessarily applicable anymore, so to speak. So, you know, thinking about your supply chains. So rules of origin process. So what do you need to kind of do to kind of assess whether or not your goods are eligible to be imported to Great Britain? because it's not north aligned into Great Britain with zero tariffs. So one, you need to classify your goods by using the harmonization system. So you need to kind of find out every goods has got, you know, whether it's a pair of woolen socks, whether it's a cotton dress, they've all got a code, and wherever you go in the world, if you put in that harmonization code, it will tell you what that product is. And then from there, so the first 6 digits of 10-digit classification code would enable them to be able to kind of identify where the goods have come from, whether or not when imported into the UK. So you need to understand, and I think the biggest thing around Brexit is you need to kind of get to grips and manage your supply chain. So it might be that actually you can source lots of materials from the UK, and then obviously through sourcing lots of raw materials, you're manufacturing and putting them together and creating new products. That's great, and you can re-export them to the UK. Re-export them to Great Britain in the new form. So managing your supply chains is really important as part of this whole process. Do they originate in the UK or the EU or outside of the EU? Okay, so we need to kind of understand where our materials and our products are being sourced and manufactured. And as I say, there has to be a significant transformation or processing of the goods in Ireland for the rules, for them to meet the requirements of the rules of origin. And as part of that, you must have evidence to prove the goods meet the rules of origin. And once upon a time, I'm not too sure whether they still do it, but no one's really talked about it. But we used to kind of, when we used to have these things with agents and distributors wanting to import goods into markets, there was things like rules of origin certificates, but I don't think we need to necessarily do it anymore. But you know what you need to do is you need to get a supply declaration, you know, which can be used as your rules of origin. Or you can self-declare that your goods meet the rules of origin by making out a statement on the origin and sending this with to your customer with your exports. Is another way of kind of doing it. So as I say, if your products don't meet the rules of origin, if your goods don't necessarily meet the rules of origin and you have significant levels of product, and you have significant levels of product that you sell to the UK, one of the things that you can do is you can kind of use UK approved bonded warehouses. So bonded warehouse means that basically when you export your goods to Great Britain, you can put them into a warehouse and you won't be charged any taxes, duties or tariffs and so forth until, for example, I don't know, you get orders and then you release the goods into free circulation into the market, then you'll be charged the relevant import duties and tariffs where relevant. So it's another way of kind of managing your cash flow if you've got significant stock, so to speak, kind of thing. So thinking about paperwork to support your exports. Hold on, where am I going? Oh, okay. So export paperwork process. So what do you need? So when you're thinking about shipping your goods to the UK or to Great Britain, sorry, I keep saying UK, Great Britain, you need to make sure that on your paperwork, you clearly state your own EORI number. And then you also state the buyers or the people that are buying the goods from you, EORI's number. You need the buyer's telephone number and your harmonization code. But also you need to make sure that you have the relevant evidence to prove that, you know, your goods meet the rules of origin. And then you need to make sure that you have good product description, needs to be on your weigh bill and your commercial invoice or your pro forma invoice. And you need to also document the value of your goods. And it's important that the goods are valued correctly, because again, with this whole import one-stop shop and the VAT situation, you could end up kind of getting extra charges when you don't need to. So also on your package, you know, legally you must have the following statement on your commercial or pro forma invoice to support your shipping. So make sure that, you know, the exporter of the products covered by this document, reference your URI number, declares that accepts where otherwise clearly indicated that these products are of, you know, preferential origin, and then making sure that you kind of put the date, the place and the name of the exporter that you're going to be sending it to. So one of the biggest things that's kind of come back around, you know, I think because we've been in the European Union for so long, we've kind of got a bit lazy, I think, about sometimes when we think about exporting, and thinking about, you know, because it's just not necessarily lazy, but I think it's just become very easy for us to be able to kind of, you know, take an order, pack it and send it off, you know, with the relevant kind of documentation and so forth. And Inco terms have been around forever. And, you know, 2020, they kind of came back into fashion because of Brexit. And now everybody's trying to understand what they are. So Inco terms is all about reducing your liabilities. So again, as I say, understanding your supply chain. So learn where the liability, who is liable for what when shipping goods, you or the buyer. Also thinking about your wider supply chain, who, you know, if you're sourcing products, sourcing materials from the UK, and you're kind of doing backwards and forwards and so forth, you know, who's liable for what charges in that respect, so to speak. And understand your Inco terms and agree with your buyer prior to shipment, but also making sure you're working with a really good shipping company who can help with processing some of that paperwork for you. So what are Inco terms? So Inco terms are based on the principle that risk of loss or damage is transferred from the seller to the buyer when the seller has fulfilled the delivery obligations according to the applicable terms. So it's all about how your goods get to the end user and who's responsible for the different stages that your goods will go through to get to the end supplier. So from your door, who's going to pick up the goods, who's going to put them onto the truck, who's going to do the paperwork for them to get onto the ship, who's going to then, you know, who's then responsible for them sailing across the seas, who's responsible for unloading them from the ship, and so forth. And, you know, in 2020, they get updated every 10 years. And so we were really lucky last year. And so they've been updated last year, which will now, the Inco terms will now stand in place for another 10 years. So these are the Inco terms. You know, I'm not going to go through them all now, but you can, I've actually put this on my website and all of the Inco terms are listed there with further details of what each of these means. So Ex Works is the most easiest of, you know, Inco terms. So basically, and it's the least risk to you as the business wanting to export. So Ex Works means that basically when you're shipping your goods, the buyer of the goods will come to your door and they will pick up the goods and they will basically be responsible for all these different stages all the way to the end customer. Okay, so you can kind of see with the grey dots as you kind of go through, it kind of outlines who, you know, who's all the ones in the pink or the peach, that's your liability and that's your risk, depending on what terms, shipping terms you are going to be using. And all the above in the teal green, that is the seller's, the buyer's risk in terms of what they will be liable if they take on the relevant terms. So again, it's all about understanding those, so to speak. So, you know, if you want more information on that, you can go to my website and I've kind of listed that diagram and the whole kind of outline on that. So understanding VAT, because I think is the thing that everybody wants to know about. So I'm going to basically point out now that I'm not an expert on VAT. I'm also not a qualified accountant. So I'm just going to talk around it, you know, but it's important that you kind of get a qualified accountant to maybe help you with this, because obviously I think this is one of the biggest bugbears and the biggest challenges that a lot of businesses are facing at the moment. So basics around VAT. So business to business selling. So if you're doing business with GB, business to business, you don't add, there's no VAT should be added to your export invoices. Okay. So, and I think that's one of the questions and complaints and gripes that came through from EMA, is that some of you guys were a bit frustrated because British companies were putting VAT on their invoices. So that's a clear communication that you need to kind of go back to them and tell them, stop putting VAT on your invoices, because actually the new processing, the VAT will be added at the end. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. So imports will be, import VAT will now kind of in some ways kind of replace that, and will be charged on goods imported and exported to the EU, or imported and exported to Great Britain. So again, thinking about your Inco terms, which I kind of talked about before, if we kind of go back to this, you know, who's responsible for what, yeah? And this will kind of, again, tell you where the risk and who's liable for the import VAT. So you cannot, as I said before, if you're not registered for VAT, you cannot reclaim VAT or import VAT if you're not registered. And under the new under the new kind of arrangement, you should also be, if you are VAT registered in Ireland, you should also register yourself for VAT in the UK to help with the processing of reclaiming your VAT. And then business to consumer selling, there's VAT to be done there, but I'll talk a bit more about that under the import one-stop shop for you. So Northern Ireland, so business as usual with Northern Ireland in terms of exporting. This will continue to operate as part of the EU VAT area and the rules on the exporting to the European Union. So that won't change. But also Northern Ireland, it kind of falls into two territories. So it falls within the European Union if you're selling goods that way. So the normal way that you're kind of doing transaction will continue. But also, you know, if you have a location or if you have offices or production happening in Northern Ireland, then Northern Ireland is also part of the UK VAT system as well. And as I say, if you're kind of operating out of Northern Ireland, you should be using the Trader Support Service to help you with some of those processes in terms of paperwork and import duties. VAT must be applied to supplies of goods as it's the rest of the UK. So this is the only place where if you're operating out of Northern Ireland, you need to make sure that you need to be putting on VAT from Northern Ireland if the sale is then kind of come back to the UK. Okay, that's the only place within this whole situation that you do that. If the goods are moved through Northern Ireland to the European Union, this will be zero tariff rated. Okay, so that's kind of that. So there's been lots of changes in terms of VAT and what's happening here. And, you know, one of the reasons why this is happening is basically to modernize the VAT system. And it's kind of happened on a global basis. You know, we had the COP27, is it COP27? Yeah, no, not COP27. We had the G7 summit a couple of weeks ago, and there was a massive agreement that was kind of put in place by the 7 countries that were involved in that, including the UK, where we were going to have a standard rate of tax on a global basis, which would kind of stop companies from using certain countries, for example, Ireland with Google and Facebook, kind of having companies kind of operating out of there, and also for other countries not being able to kind of get their fair share of tax. So this is all part of the whole kind of digital revolution. You know, we've become very digitalized in like the last 20 years or so. And so now the laws and tax laws are starting to catch up with this. So the whole point of this whole new VAT system that's kind of been brought in, you know, whether it's Brexit or not Brexit, is to create a level playing field for everyone involved, and also involved in online selling. So, you know, so new rules kind of came into place on the 1st of July of this year. So I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. So what does this mean in terms of the new VAT laws? So this is more on a business to consumer basis. So this is kind of basically focusing on, for example, if you're selling stuff from Ireland and you're selling it to the UK, you know, and customers are buying it from the UK, they will only be charged the VAT rate of their country, or they will be charged, they'll be charged the VAT rate you will charge them the VAT rate as though they're charging it, buying it from their own countries. So yes, hopefully that makes sense. So if you're selling from Ireland and your buyer is in the UK, the VAT rate in the UK is 20%. I'm not too sure what the Irish VAT rate is, but basically you wouldn't be charging the Irish VAT rate, you'll be charging on your goods the UK VAT rate. And that also works on a EU-wide basis. So it doesn't matter whether it's just the UK, this, you know, you'll need to make sure that you are charging the correct rate of VAT on all goods going into France, for Germany. So you need to kind of be looking up and seeing what their VAT rates are. So who's affected by this? Everyone who sells on e-commerce, okay? So whether it's in your supply chain, your courier service, marketplaces that you might be working with, online sellers, and also consumers. So it's all about the distance selling kind of notion that's kind of been in place for a really long time. So so let's kind of move on. So what's kind of happened as part of this upgrade on VAT, basically what we had before as part of the European Union, each country would have a threshold whereby, you know, depending on where you were, some countries would say you can basically export up to £35,000 worth of goods doing B2B, B2C online selling up to £35,000. Once you get to £35,000, you're going to need to register in our market for VAT. And depending on which market it was, you know, you could sell, you know, the threshold for distance selling was between 35 to up to £100,000. So that has basically been scrapped, okay? But also up until in the beginning of this year, we had this whole thing of anything below 22 euros was exempt of VAT, okay? So those two rules have completely gone now. And so what is in is all goods, everything that you basically sell to the UK or whether you sell it to the European Union will be charged VAT regardless of their value. And as I said before, they will be charged, imported goods will be charged local rate of where the sale takes place rather than where the goods were sold from. So so one of the key things about this is, one, you need to kind of go and have a look and review your website and your website platform to make sure that your website platform can accommodate different changes of VAT sales rates for each market in the European Union. So there might be a massive investment. Actually, you might need to, if that's part of your business, a big part of your business is online, and your platform doesn't support that, then maybe you might need to think about moving it to another platform. And then two, kind of, as I say, kind of going in, if you have got a good platform, to go in and basically change all your VAT rates. So there's quite a lot of work to do there around making sure you've got all the correct VAT rates for every market in the European Union for your goods, so to speak, going forward. So distance selling rules were abolished and replaced. So the distance selling rules have been abolished, but if you are an EU-based company, and actually you are an EU-based country, you can sell up to £10,000 worth of goods into the European Union before the threshold's applied, so to speak. So actually, that doesn't apply to you. But either way, in thinking about coming back to Great Britain, there will be still the situation of you will have to pay VAT on all goods coming into the UK. So for you guys, you'll need to make sure that, one, you are kind of got the correct, but you've got the correct VAT thresholds for all markets in Europe. However, in Europe, you can sell up to £10,000 worth of goods before you then have to register in the relevant countries for VAT. See, it's a bit complicated, isn't it? So another thing to kind of think about is online marketplaces. So some of you might be selling through third parties, maybe, I don't know, Amazon, maybe, you know, some kind of independent kind of boutique, you know, Amazon, eBay, and so forth. So you know, there are two different ways of kind of that marketplaces can kind of be viewed, but they tend to be viewed and deemed as the supplier for VAT. Okay, and that kind of goes for the UK side as well. So any B2C sales of goods that are exported to the UK, sorry, online marketplaces are deemed suppliers. So for any goods that do not exceed 150 euros or 135 pounds coming into the UK. Okay, so so B2C suppliers of goods within the EU or non-EU need to be kind of covered by this. But also if you're holding stock in a non-EU country, so for example, if you're holding stock in Great Britain, and your marketplace is kind of in charge of that, then you need to make sure then they take the responsibility of processing the VAT on your behalf. One of the things you need to think about is for the UK, if you're working with a marketplace, is keep local VAT registrations, as you need these. And you need to keep them for up to 10 years, so to speak, because you need to be able to prove, you need to be able to present them to the VAT authorities in Great Britain, so to speak. Consignments. So when we talk about consignments, what does a consignment mean? Consignments are goods that are sold to the same customer by the same supplier using the same transport contract and shipped together. So it could be that you're doing, you know, someone's ordered two things off your website and then you've picked, packed and sent them together to the same person. So that is one consignment. It can be one item or it could be 50 items. So that's what consignment is. So one-stop shop. So this is a new scheme that kind of came in on the 1st of July, and it affects everybody. And it some way kind of affects Great Britain. It affects us in terms of if you are working with people who are selling back to Ireland, then it potentially impacts you there, so to speak. But I think one of the key things is you need to register for VAT here in the UK to be able to process that kind of going forward. But kind of thinking about the wider EU and how that works with you guys, and how you kind of will be working. It's an electronic portal that simplifies VAT compliance for B2C sales of low value goods sold at distance to EU customers. Okay, so this is what it's all about. So for both EU and non-EU based companies, it enables you to basically enables single VAT registration. So you can basically register yourselves in Ireland for this with the relevant with a relevant organisation or the relevant authority, and and registration is a single periodic VAT submission to fulfil your VAT obligations across 27 EU member states. So basically, by registering for One Stop Shop, it enables you to be able to sell throughout the European Union online on your website. As I say, making sure you're selling your product at the correct VAT level, and through the relevant authorities, where you'll need to maybe have a fiscal rep or you need to have a one-stop shop account, they will then collect all the VAT that has been paid for across the European Union and across all the customers, so to speak. And then at the end of each period, what they will do is, you know, if you've had, I don't know, £1,000 worth of VAT in France, and you've had £2,000 in Spain, rather than you having to go and register in every single country in Europe to be able to kind of claim back your VAT, you can do it all through One Stop Shop. Okay, so the One Stop Shop collects all the VAT, and at the end of each period, they will then distribute the relevant amounts of VAT to the markets of where those sales took place. So sign up for the One Stop Shop is optional. And it's available in every member state. So you might want to go and have a look and see what's going on in Ireland. There are some countries in the European Union who are still behind on setting up their one-stop shop and getting it live. So have a look around and see what's out there. So types of one-stop shops, to kind of quickly go through this. So you have union one-stop shop. So there's different types of one-stop shops, and depending on the type of selling you're going to be doing, depends on what you need. So the union one-stop shop is an intro EU distant sales of physical goods already located within the European Union at the point of sale. So this is all about cross-border sales, suppliers, and through this kind of union one-stop shop, you'll submit a quarterly VAT return, okay, through that one. A non-union one-stop shop is a B2C supplies of services to EU or non-EU based countries. And this is a single quarterly VAT return. And then the import one-stop shop is about B2C distant sales of imported goods by non-EU countries. So consignments with an intrinsic value of less than 150 euros, so to speak. So it might be that for you guys, you might need to kind of apply for more than one, register for more than one. So the union one-stop shop, because you're part of the European Union, which allows you to kind of work within those parameters, would be one if you're selling directly to the European Union. And then the other one that you might be looking at, you know, if you're kind of working with businesses outside of the European Union, like Great Britain, then the import one-stop shop would be another one for you to be looking at if you're kind of buying in products from Great Britain, but also making sure that the value of the goods that you're buying are less than 150 euros. So, so just to kind of go through this a bit more, so non-EU based businesses importing low value goods of less than 150 euros should be using the import one-stop shop method. So register once in one member state of your choice, and it must have an EU-based intermediary. Okay, and then if you are EU-based, then you might want to use either the one-stop shop or the import one-stop shop, and must register for both within one member state. So again, because you're part of Ireland, this should all still be in place for you. If it's non-EU based with stock in the Union, so for example, you know, a UK company that's got stock in the European Union, then you would register for a one-stop shop in the relevant market where your stock is held. So the process of import one-stop shop for exporters. So so I put UK registers for this, but you guys can register. So Ireland, you would register for a one-stop shop for exporting to the UK. EU, so the UK consumer orders goods on the website, and the customer sees to checkout and pays the VAT based on the country of destination. So the VAT in the UK is 20%. Goods are packed and labelled, customs data is entered, so all the relevant kind of stuff along with your EORI number and your HS codes, and it's then shipped to the EU border, so to speak, and customs clearance process. And this also works if you're kind of selling into European Union as well as part of this. Okay, so shipping the parcel will be exempt from VAT, so you won't have to pay VAT, okay, as part of this whole new process of one-stop shop. But also you present your one-stop shop VAT number, so it can be collected further down the line from you. So no VAT is paid and it's delivered to the customer. And then accounting side, each month is submitted on your quarterly kind of returns, but making sure that your goods valued are under 150 euros. So why use this new system, or why do you need to use this new system? You don't have to use this new system, but it's kind of becoming something that we're all having to get our heads around. So one of the things around, whether it's Brexit or whether it's whether it's just genuinely selling within the European Union, it's going to reduce the red tape, you know, and it's going to stop your goods from getting stuck at the borders. And so it's going to get cleared a lot quicker within this new process. You know, and also with this, because you're in Ireland, you know, you only need to register for this once, and all your processing and collection of VAT can happen out of Ireland, so to speak, you know, rather than having to do it across lots of different countries in the European Union. But also it's a single consolidation once a month of your VAT return, kind of going forward, rather than having to deal with 27 separate countries every month, which will obviously need another person to be employed for that. And it can help, you know, the customs clear quicker, as I kind of say. And if you don't have it, it's going to, you know, there's not, you know, in terms of the options of delivery companies, a lot of delivery companies are kind of getting on board and doing this now. Someone's kind of writing something. Any questions? Yeah. A lot of companies are getting on board and doing this. So, you know, potentially if you've not got an import one-stop shop account or not using these relevant services, then you're going to have a reduced option of delivery services of who you can use going forward. Also, because they're going to have a reduced option of delivery services, it's going to be a higher cost to you for additional handling fees on that, so to speak. And it's going to possibly potentially delay your parcel being and getting to the customer and being processed and cleared at the borders, which then obviously kind of then falls into poor customer experience and, you know, potential loss of customers. So really think about, you know, what you need kind of going forward on that. So goods over 150 euros, so anything over 150 euros or 135 pounds needs to kind of go through the normal customs process. You will need to register here in Great Britain for VAT, for that to be processed through those relevant means, so to speak, and then be able to claim it back. But also you'll need, you know, potentially you'll need to appoint a fiscal rep, an importer of records or fiscal rep to process your VAT for you. Okay, so that's one of the things that's kind of come out of Brexit, but also that's come out of this new import one-stop shop process, is that it's kind of created this new kind of role within the VAT processing system, where potentially if you've not got someone, if you've not got it within your, if you're not certified, if you've not got an accountant that can do it for you, then you need to basically appoint someone to do it for you, and represent you and be the importer of records, but also kind of be responsible for, you know, adhering to compliance and the regulations and tax authorities in the relevant market where you deem to be compiling your VAT. So just to kind of go back on some of those points on the Inco terms. So some of you might be selling on your websites and you're selling, you know, selling direct to consumer, you know, some of those terms which are kind of highlighted. So duty tax paid, DTP, is one of the ones that, you know, most of you most probably use when you're kind of selling online to your websites, or, you know, you might be kind of saying, yeah, this is the cost of the sales, but you're going to be responsible for the import duties and taxes. So how does that kind of work in terms of the one-stop shop, and how does that work just generally? So, you know, duty tax is paid. So these are paid by the carrier at customs. So whoever you appoint to basically ship your goods, they will basically pay the duty taxes paid for you, so to speak. And sometimes this can be a good option if you do not have a one-stop shop set up in time for this whole process, because I think everybody's just kind of going, oh, I need to set it up, and there's obviously delays because everybody's trying to set this up at the moment. And if your goods are over 150 euros, so this is one way of kind of doing it. So, you know, having your relevant carrier, if they offer that service, doing it that way, and it helps to manage kind of frictionless trade. But not all carriers offer DTP option. And also there's only, you know, and if they do offer it, they'll only offer it for a small number of countries within the European Union. So you need to kind of really do your research and your homework as to if you want to use this option as a way of kind of shipping your goods or paying, you know, managing your duties, then make sure that you're kind of having that conversation with your courier company. And then we have delivered duty paid, which tends to be another common one. So these are paid by the sender. So you guys will basically pay the duties on the goods and not the receiver, and requires the sender. So when you're kind of working in this kind of nature, you'll need to have importer records, as I've kind of said, or fiscal rep who's going to be in the relevant markets where you're selling those goods, who can basically be responsible for processing and claiming the relevant taxes and so forth, and documenting that for you. You know, and they also need to be registered in that relevant country that you're selling those goods to. You know, if you don't have an importer of record or a fiscal rep or an intermediary in the relevant country, and you're trying to sell your goods through this particular kind of shipping channel, then potentially your goods may be rejected. And countries like Germany are really hot on enforcing this. So, you know, don't kind of think that, you know, we'll just kind of get around it, but there are some countries that are really, really hot on this. So make sure that you've got the relevant people in place to support you. And then finally, we have delivery paid at place. So this means that the buyer or the consumer who's bought your goods, they will basically be responsible for paying the duties and taxes on the goods. And again, if you're going to do that, make it very clear on your website that this is how we roll. This is how we sell our goods. You're going to get a letter from the customs office saying your goods have arrived, and you've got to go to the office and pay these import duties before we release your goods. So really think about whether or not you want to go down this route, because it's, you know, it's going to potentially have a negative impact, and, you know, it's going to turn customers off not wanting to buy from your website, or, you know, or not to return as customers kind of going forward. And then, you know, there's the other thing to kind of think about is the return goods release scheme. So, you know, one of the things that we do have here in the UK is, you know, I know that some of you are makers, and I'll talk a bit more about this maybe a little bit further down the line with some of the jewellery companies, because I think there's some toing and froing that you'll be doing. But for example, you know, if either goods need to be returned because people don't want them, or goods need to be adjusted, then we have a returns good release scheme here in the UK, which you know, we can process things through. So it allows you know, goods to be shipped back to the UK to and from in an unaltered state, so to speak. But also kind of if you're doing inward processing, this also falls under this. So for example, if you're making something and you need to send it to the UK for another proportion of it to be kind of, you know, done, and then you're sending it back, then potentially this scheme can also support you there, so to speak. Apart from any work that may be carried out or maintained. Okay, so you need to basically complete an import declaration form as part of this, so that the VAT and the import duties are waived on the goods coming to either into Ireland or into the UK, so to speak. And to claim relief on import VAT, the importer must be the same person. Okay, so you need to be basically working between the same people or the same companies or the same customer. So other things to kind of think about beyond the VAT and tax kind of situation and so forth is thinking about ATA carnets. So, you know, you're still in the European Union, so all great and all lovely. And when you go to trade shows, you know, when you go to meetings, you know, you're able to kind of, you can just basically put things in your luggage and just go. But if you're coming to the UK, and again, you know, if you're coming to do maybe Birmingham Spring Fair, Top Drawer, any, you know, London Fashion Week, or whatever trade shows here in Great Britain, you can't do that no more. You're going to have paperwork and a passport for any goods or samples that you're bringing into the UK. So you'll need to apply for an ATA carnet to support your goods, okay, for them to be able to be shipped to the UK for commercial purposes and for trade shows. And the passport allows your goods to be able to move freely in and out of the UK. You know, you most probably are using already. So if you know, lots of brands kind of going to maybe the US or going to Japan and so forth. Again, those kind of places, you know, businesses tend to use ATA carnets to get their goods in and out of the country. And an ATA carnet lasts up to 12 months. Really think specifically about what you want to list on your ATA carnet so that you can maximize it. And really think about the descriptions you put on your ATA carnet, so that if, for example, you happen to have to, you know, change maybe some of your products, it still falls in line, so to speak. Yes, and you can get them from your local Chamber of Commerce or your business enterprise agencies. I'm not too sure what they are in Ireland. And then another thing to think about with Brexit is trademarks. If you have registered for trademarks, then under Brexit, that potentially will be affected. So there's two things to kind of think about here. One, many companies have within the European Union tend to register. So one of the things that's happened initially with Brexit is that anybody that's registered with a, you know, got a European trademark under the Madrid Protocol, all existing trademarks have been rolled over into English law. Okay, so everything has been rolled over. So it's not a case of, because we were part of the European Union, it's not a case of, okay, we've left the European Union, your trademarks are no longer valid. They are still valid in the UK under the Madrid Protocol, and they will be valid until the time that they expire. Okay, so, but once they expire, you will need to register to do 2 registrations. So you'll need to do registration with the European Union, but you'll also need to do a registration in the UK into the Intellectual Property Office, to make sure that your trademarks also protected here. Okay, and similar kind of things will be happening with design registrations and patents as well as part of that. So final notes, I'm going to stop talking now. Apply for all the schemes that are relevant and support your business through the process of exporting either to the European Union or to the UK. Update your VAT across relevant markets for local VAT levels. You know, that's just kind of outside of Brexit, but also applies for Brexit. Identify and secure a fiscal rep that can help process VAT here in the UK, but also in Europe. So look closer to home, and streamline your supply chain to reduce your risk wherever possible. So if you can kind of try and keep everything in-house in Ireland, it's going to make it a lot more simpler with your rules of origin and the relevant paperwork, but also making sure that you've got much more favourable terms in terms of the costs and import duties on your goods. And lastly, learn your Inco terms, kind of going forward, and making sure that you understand how they work, and how to get the most out of them in terms of working with your shipper, but also whether it's B2B or B2C. Here are some resources on my website. I've got some stuff around navigating Brexit, which is in the process of being updated with all this new stuff around the one-stop shop and so forth. You know, use the uk.gov and .gov.uk website. There's loads of information on there. Lots of kind of things where you can kind of go and find out your harmonisation code and what the import duties would be on your goods if you were to sell them into the UK as well. Use your local Chamber of Commerce for things like ATA carnets, you know, and any additional, and also is it Irish Enterprise that you have here? Yeah, so Irish Enterprise is the equivalent of Department for International Trade. So, you know, there'll be lots of information there. And then look at, put the Institute of Exporters for free workshops, but also look at fiscal reps. And everybody kind of asks about fiscal reps. So as I kind of said before, you can speak to your accountant as one point of kind of looking at, maybe contact your local Chamber of Commerce. There are some fiscal reps here in the UK, Avalara, Simply, VAT, and Global Compliance. There are many more. There's, you know, and I'm not paid to talk about any of these. These are just some that I've kind of heard being floating around, and I've kind of been to some of their websites, their webinars and so forth, but they're very proactive in terms of this area. So have a look around and ask around. It might be that there might be something whereby you could work with a UK business. So if you're working with a manufacturer here in the UK, it might be that you might be able to do something in-house where you can kind of set up an agreement and put in the relevant kind of processes for them to maybe be your fiscal rep and do that whole kind of processing for you here. So that's kind of it for me.
Toyin, thank you very much. We have some compliments in the chat, and then we have some frustration. It's not with you. I think it's just a general frustration, and I know we've been facing this since June 2016, and in total over the last 18 months, I've had five different webinars on Brexit. I personally think it's very, very hard on small business.
It is.
And it's very hard on creative businesses who have it hard enough as it is. And I'm just going to ask you about it. That would you have had experience of anybody, say, coming through Cockpit Studio, or that they're having difficulties, or how are they surmounting difficulties, or what approach are they taking to this in reverse, so to speak?
So shall I shut this down, stop sharing? I'll come back on screen with you. Yeah, so everybody's kind of in disarray about what's kind of happening. It's hit all businesses really hard. And I think, you know, it has hit small businesses extremely hard, because whilst we've had Brexit, actually what it's created is a lot more additional costs. So even when I've talked about fiscal reps there, if you're selling on your e-commerce site and you're only selling maybe €100 worth of products to Germany a month, but your fiscal rep's going to cost you £2,000 a month, then it becomes financially, you know, it's not financially viable to do that. You know, so lots of companies are really looking at their businesses, and sadly a lot in terms of this whole new one-stop shop process, a lot of them are switching off their e-commerce business for the moment, and are not selling to the European Union because of the whole having to have a bit intermediary and the VAT processing situation, which is, I think, the most complicated part of this EU Brexit process.
Okay, it really is, it's really difficult. And quite a lot of our GDP levels are reliant on the UK. So it's a kind of a completely learning, relearning approach. But all we can do is take it by stages. And as I've been saying to a number of people, I source someone like you really carefully. And you've tackled a very, very difficult topic. I think you've brought some insights to it. I think it's something that makers will have to come back to. I'll definitely have to replay you a few times. The Irish information is best gleaned from Enterprise Ireland or our local enterprise offices. But I just want people to know that if you have specific questions afterwards, that I'll refer them on to you, and I really appreciate it. I know you will be able to help. And just let everybody know, anyone, we kept everybody in the audience. I don't know if that's a positive, but anyway, everybody stayed, which I'm going to take as a positive. And what I'm going to do now is any of the jewelers who would like to stay on, you're going to specifically deal with some of their issues that I highlighted to you. Okay.
Yeah,
is that good?
Yeah, yes, I think the main one is around hallmarking, which everybody's like,
yes.
So we'll talk about that, and then I'll just throw some questions at me and we can kind of work through that. But thank you very much, guys. It's been lovely hosting you all.
Okay, well, that's the first thing. So do you want to start going on the hallmarking, and then maybe people could come in with their questions?
Okay, let me just kind of go back to the presentation. So jewelry exports. Okay, so so all of what I've kind of just talked about applies to you guys. And I think I'm just going to talk a bit about hallmarking, because this seems to be a stumbling block. Because if you're getting your hallmarking done here in the UK, what does that mean for you? And also it's taken the assay office a little while to kind of get around this. So as part of Brexit, you know, we've withdrawn from the European Union, but also for us pulling out the European Union, we've also pulled out of the Hoyt-Wipper agreement, which basically covered hallmarking, you know, which was originally established by the European Court of Justice that enabled the mutual recognition of hallmarks between all different member states. And because the UK is no longer part of that, you know, our hallmarks under this particular thing is not is not recognised anymore. And I'm not too sure how the process is happening with you guys. Are you kind of manufacturing your goods in Ireland and then sending them to the UK to be hallmarked for them to be sent back to you guys? Because I assume that most probably is the process and what's happening here. So because we're pulled out of that, we now fall under the common control marks, which is still recognised by the European Union. And so we are a member of that, and it's separate from the hallmarking convention. And it alongside some EU and non-EU members. So members of this convention can accept jewellery with common control marks. So basically, and it's an international hallmark. So that's great. And the vast majority of the countries in the European Union accept the common control marks as a form of kind of hallmarking. Kind of going forward if you're doing that. So some of the notes to kind of note around this is that not all the states are. So Serbia and Italy are not part of the common control marks system at the moment, but they are ratifying, so they're going to be joining. Okay, so if you're sending jewelry to Serbia and Italy, I'm not too sure, I can't say off the top of my head what's in place for those. But on the other hand, Luxembourg and Germany, do not require hallmarks for pre-market authorization. So, in those particular markets, it's fine for you guys not to have the necessary hallmarks to kind of move forward. But like people in country likes to be difficult, lovely France. So France, it is a legal requirement for you to have hallmark and to have that relevant hallmark, okay? So as importers, importers must register with the Bureau de la Granate and also in Spain. So with these two particular markets, because it's a legal requirement, what you're having to do with, if you're selling to those particular markets, is an added cost. But for you guys to basically ship your good, if you were doing it in the UK, you potentially might need to ship your goods to France and to Spain and to have them all hallmarked there, which again, in the speaking of Brexit, it's going to be another additional cost to companies to get this done as part of the process. Return of goods for adjustments. So I kind of talked about, and I think this is another area which you guys are most probably kind of find a bit confusing. But actually, I think one of the key things around Brexit and Ireland is the key thing is about building really good relationships with your suppliers in England, because whatever pain you're feeling, they're feeling it just as much. Yeah. They're still trying to get their heads around all of this in the same way that you guys are trying to get your heads around it. So if you can come together and work together on how to navigate this and how you can both support each other, that becomes beneficial for the working relationship that you've got, all the better, definitely. Don't feel that, we're all being difficult here in the UK, or in Great Britain and don't want to do business with you. It's just that the clarity and the information is constantly changing. And, there are new barriers that are being put up that makes it in some cases virtually impossible for poor companies to actually do business anymore. And we've had situations where companies are basically leaving the UK and they're going to relocate in the European Union. So, big issues around that. So, what I talked about the returns goods relief. So relief can be applied to goods that are being re-imported into the UK and have been previously exported from the UK. Okay, so in order to qualify for the relief, the returns good relief scheme, here's some information on that. So, the goods have to be in free circulation when they're exported, unless they were, unless it's kind of to do with your inward processing. Okay, so I think this is coming from an inward processing kind of point of view that you guys are kind of working on this. And the goods must be returned. So if you need to have any adjustments or any work done on it, so to speak, the goods must be returned within 3 years of the export process kind of happening, unless there's exceptional circumstances. Okay, and you must have proof of exports, or both parties need to have proof of exports in the form of export document declarations. Okay, so make sure you're keeping hold. I'd say make sure you're keeping hold of all documentation kind of going forward for anything to do with exporting and Brexit kind of until it's all kind of sorted itself out. So the goods must not have been processed or altered beyond the maintenance and repair of the original state. So this is for goods, for example, you know, I don't know, someone's diamonds fell out of their ring, you know, or, you know, a ring's been tarnished and so forth. So making sure that it's just, you know, we're just basically fixing and repairing kind of thing. The VAT on returned goods, the exporter. So again, kind of thinking about the person, making sure it's the same person. So if you're doing this with a customer, okay, so the customer has to be the same person that you export and import from. If only a proportion of the original export is returned. So for example, a pair of earrings, and they only return one of the earrings, then it's subject to the above relief is available. So it's available for the relief kind of scheme. And also on real importation, any duty suspended at the time of their original importation, inward processing must be paid. Okay. I'm going to open it up to questions because there's quite a lot. I'm just kind of interested to hear what people have got to say and what people's queries are. You're on mute.
Thank you. I was just saying, so am I interested, but it's gone very quiet. On the questions, it's gone very quiet. I know that you looked into the questions that I had.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is about the VAT,
yeah,
and
it is, yes.
So, well, VAT on the British people. So again, coming back to communication, we need to be starting to build better relationships with our suppliers and our customers. And if people from the UK are putting VAT on their invoices, you need to go back to them, you know, and actually if you go onto the .gov website, there is a page that says, you know, all invoices should be zero VAT, you know, if you're on export documentation. So you just need to tell them, you know, and I think again, like you guys, they're small businesses, they're none the wiser, they're kind of learning about this as they go along, because, you know, we were part of the European Union. Under the European Union, we charged VAT, and then we did this whole kind of reconciliation at the end of the month, and we claimed it back through, you know, connecting up with our counterparts in the relevant countries to get our tax back. That is no longer in place. But I don't think there are many small businesses that understand that that process no longer is in place. So I think that's a conversation you need to have with your suppliers. And as I say, you know, no one's out to get anybody here. You know, everybody wants to continue to have, you know, amazing, successful businesses, but the Brexit process it's just not helping it at the moment.
Okay, right. Dan has a question here. Just before I go to Dan, could you run through the country of origin piece again?
Yeah. What do you want to know about the country of origin?
Just explain it to me as okay, right. I'm in Ireland, and I'm making a piece, 18 karat gold and some precious gemstones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I have imported the jewels, which I say bought in Munich in Argenta, and they're from various places around the world, and I brought them back to Ireland with me, but I then, part of my process is taking place in Britain, and then I'm bringing the piece back to sell it to a client, say in Paris. How does that work? Because that's a kind of example that our clients would have.
So you've got all the raw materials.
Yeah.
Where is it initially made?
Okay, it's being designed and made in Ireland, and part of it is being finished then in Britain.
Okay, and then it's being shipped from Britain to the customer, or
back to Ireland to be then sent to Paris to the customer.
Okay, so potentially in that case, you need, you know, although although it has been modified in the UK, it hasn't been modified. So for example, if you've got a ring and you're sending it to the UK to be polished, so to speak, and then you're sending it back to Ireland, then it's not significant, there's not been significantly enough transformation in the process in the UK for it to be deemed as origins in the UK. So it will be deemed as origins in Ireland, which should go in, so it still kind of stands as zero tariffs, so to speak, because you just need to document that. That's more of a documentation process, because it's not a case of that ring has been sent from Ireland to the UK and it been turned into a pair of earrings and sent back to Ireland, because that's a significant transformation that's kind of happened there. But
right. So even the setting, if stones were set in Britain, that wouldn't be considered a transformation. It's just part of the process, is it? Or where's one draw the line?
Well, so it depends on your harmonization codes. Okay, so what you're importing, or you're exporting the goods as. So if you're exporting the goods as gemstones and the casing as two different things, and then they're coming into the UK and they're being set and they're being made into a ring, then that's significant transformation. Okay. Yeah. And so those goods will then, from the UK side, will be deemed as zero duties and will come back to you. And then once they come back to you, because you're part of the European Union, you're kind of working in the normal process.
Okay. Now, how have you found that this has affected British high-end jewelers?
Massive.
Yeah, but if you could just cite some examples. I mean, what are they actually doing? How are they getting around this?
Well, in terms of jewelers, a lot of them are not necessarily looking at, so there's a couple of things with high-end jewelers. Some of them are not making in the UK, which is a massive sticking point. So it's not being made in the UK and it's not being made within the European Union. So, they've got their origins are maybe Thailand or they're India, Jaipur or whatever. So they've got an issue of, that whole kind of thing of it's designed here, packaged here, exported. They've got massive taxes going onto their products. A lot of the jewelers are just basically focusing on looking at their collections and working out what's financially viable. And focusing on, well, these are the pieces that we're going to focus on selling to the European Union, and these are the pieces that we're just not going to bother with, so to speak. But yeah, it's a massive sticking point, because we don't really make very much here in the UK on the creative, in terms of the creative processing side. There's quite a lot that happens, but we don't necessarily have the infrastructure, to kind of make significant quantities. So a lot of the processing is outsourced to different parts of Europe and different parts of the world. You
still have 4,000 clients of the Crafts Council.
Yeah.
Or they're
they're
designing and making work of various types.
And a lot of that, and I think again, I think there's a couple of things that's kind of happening as well, is that a lot of companies are shifting their attentions away from Europe and are focusing on markets outside of Europe. So, we've always had, for Britain, we've had a very strong relationship with Asia, strong relationships with markets like Japan. And, with us leaving the European Union, a lot of the free trade agreements that we were part of, so the EU-Japan, EU-South Korea, the EU-Canada agreement, those have all rolled over into UK law, so to speak. So they are still viable and still valid, although there are still some issues around that whole kind of processing and whether or not it's made in the UK. But so lots of companies are potentially looking further afield, because actually the costs of kind of doing business with Europe versus doing business with Japan, China, and the US basically leveled out now. because of Brexit.
Gosh,
I wish I could give you good news, guys.
no. This is my fifth attempt in 18 months at good news with various types of speakers. But listen, it is what it is. And I'd earnestly like to thank you for being with us this afternoon. And then on an individual basis, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm really delighted that you've shared your insights, particularly from someone who's dealing with it.
Someone's asked a question about, I'm not VAT registered and I send some back to my customer doesn't want them, then I pay GA. If I order stone.
Okay. Do you want me to read it? If I order stones on approval from a GP, a Great Britain supplier, I'm not VAT registered, and I send some back and that customer doesn't want them, then I pay GB VAT only on the stones purchased. Do I pay other duties on the delivery of the stones to me? And do I have to pay duties for the delivery of the returned stones to the supplier?
So you're not VAT, if you're not VAT registered, you can't claim back any of the import VAT. Yeah. So you need to, you need to be VAT registered in Ireland. And then 2, you need to be VAT registered. You need to get yourself a VAT registered here in the UK as well, so to speak. So you won't be able to claim if you're not VAT registered in Ireland, and you're not VAT registered in Great Britain, then you won't be able to claim back the VAT on that. Okay, and depending on where the stones were sourced from, so if you made the stones and then sent them to GB, then you wouldn't be paying duties on them. But if you're sourcing the stones from another market and they're coming into Ireland and then you're basically sending them to the UK, then you're going to be paying VAT, you're going to be paying duties on those. Okay, and then what's the last part? I have to pay duties on the delivery of the return of the stones. You should be able to claim in Ireland duty, maybe, I'm not too sure whether or not you have a scheme in place, but here in the UK, we have the returned goods relief scheme. So whereby that can be kind of suspended. So you need to kind of find some of the things that I've talked about in my presentation, you need to go and look for the equivalent in Ireland. Okay, so things like duty deferment account. Okay, you can get one in the UK, but also look to see whether or not you can get a duty deferment account in Ireland, because you're going to need one of those anyway, because you're going to be doing, you're going to be trading in European Union, so to speak, and you're going to be trading with, and you're going to be trading with people that are importing from outside the European Union. So you need to get yourself one of those anyway. So anything that I've kind of said today, you know, flip that and look for it on the Irish side, I would say. So duty deferment account, look for a fiscal rep or intermediary that can possibly kind of help you to consolidate all your VAT processing for the European Union, you know, to register here in the UK for a VAT account so that you can then reconcile your account on a quarterly basis and claim back that VAT and import VAT.
That's great.
Is there another question in there?
No, I think that's us. I'm going to reiterate that if anyone has a specific question in the future, I'll match the two of you up. I think that's probably the best way forward, isn't it?
Yes.
Check if I have any more questions here. I think that's us. And Toyin, thank you so much.
What I would say, keep positive. Keep positive, you know, be smart. I'm really kind of, you know, I'm coming back in a couple of weeks' time anyway to do one around international strategy. So, and international, growing your business international. So think about, you know, what's important to your business, where can you leverage and get business from, but also thinking about your supply chains and working and just building really strong relationships with UK customers and UK companies, because they need you just as much as you need them at this moment in time.
Okay, that's a very, very optimistic note on which to end this. And I'd like to thank everybody who had the forbearance to stick with us this afternoon. And Thank you so much for giving your expertise. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Lovely to
Bye
meet
bye
you.
bye bye bye.